what's up everybody? So kind of a start out to this new project we got going on is one of my buddies has an RX8 that he wants to build into a new drift car for him. We're going to do something that's not so common. We're going to go ahead and build a BMW M52 stroker for it and swap it into his RX8. Should be a pretty interesting build. I've only seen it done a few times out there in like Europe and stuff like that. I have yet to see one in the United States, so correct me if I'm wrong, maybe someone has done it, but we're gonna go ahead and knock this thing out. So first and foremost, we went ahead and we sourced an M52 and a M54 rotating assembly for this engine. I've already got the crank installed. We've got the block all prepped and ready to go. So today I'm actually going to be measuring the piston rings. As you can see there, what we're going to do is we're going to set the ring gaps on these, and then we'll put the pistons in with the connecting rods. That's what we're going to work on today, getting the short block assembled. As you can see here, the crank is already in. That one turned out really nice. The spec we went with on that and how we got it all measured out is all the journals ended up being at 0.022, which is perfect what we want them to be. So that's all good. Now we're going to do, like I said, the rings. Here we have the pistons, connecting rods, and then we have all new rings. So first and foremost, you want to get a feeler gauge and then get your ring set into the hole there. And then you're going to want to check to see if your feeler gauge does fit. This one does not. So what we need to do is we need to go ahead and pull the ring out of the hole. And we got that nifty ring file there. And we'll use that to open the gap. So you'll place it in there. This way. Place it in there. You want to make sure you get it in there nice and even, then spin that guy around. Being that I'm only have two hands, I'm going to go ahead and just pause this for a moment, knock that process out. I like to go ahead and use that piston, kind of check it in there, make sure we get the depth in there, the ring in there nice and even. And then go ahead and recheck the gap there on the ring. Want to make sure that feeler gauge fits in there nice and easy. And we want to kind of go from there. All right, so essentially what we're looking to get here is just make sure that your feeler gauge just fits in there nice and good. Doesn't have to be crazy tight. Obviously if it's too loose, well, maybe you want a little too far, but just enough. Just want it to slide in and out of there. Then you're gonna go ahead and do that for the upper and lower rings on each individual piston. I'm going to go ahead and do a time lapse of that and save you a lot of watching time. Alright, so we've got the rings all gapped to the spec that we want to spec them to. I recommend that you do the research on your build, what you're putting together. The reason I say that is a lot of the ring gaps are going to be different for every engine and how you build it. So depending on what kind of fuel you use, what kind of boost you're going to be running, those are all variables that are going to determine how much ring gap you're going to want to run. There's a lot of cool calculators out there to figure that stuff out, so just do a little bit of research and figure out what's going to work best for your engine. I know what's going to work best for ours because we're going to be running ethanol. We're going to be running a mild boost setup, probably less than 15 pounds. We're only looking to make like 400 horsepower. Keep it super reliable, super easy, still a fun car to street, and plenty enough power to go down to the track. Okay, so what we have going on here is we got the rings on the piston. We want to make sure you get these rings in a separate, these spaces here away from each other. So I have the top ring here, the second ring is here, and the oil ring is over here on the side. For right now, what we want to get is we want to get them kind of like a third away. So like we want to make sure like the second ring is, so like the bottom ring there, the second ring kind of away from that, and then the third ring over here. So kind of like a Y. So you have one here, one here, one here. That's the way I like to space them out. I've had really good luck with doing it that way. And then what you want to do is you want to make sure you lube this up really good with assembly lube. And then I'll show you the piston compression tool, the ring compression tool, so that we can get this slid into the bore there. We got the compression tool around the piston here. I like to let the skirt kind of hang out just a tad, just so I can get it centered into the bore here. With the M52 pistons or M54 pistons, BMW pistons, you're going to have this indicator. Make sure this arrow is pointing towards the front of the engine. Next thing I like to do is just kind of make sure that this tool is nice and flat. Just give it a couple decent little taps before you try to tap that piston in there. And then just make sure your crank is at bottom dead center, so that that crank journal where it meets up with the rod is all the way at the bottom, so when you punch this through it doesn't hit the crank or anything like that. And then there you go. We've got the first piston in its hole. 5 more to go. So we got that first piston in here. We're gonna check the bearing clearance of the rod bearings. So what I got is some plastic gauge. You can grab that stuff anywhere, O'Reilly's, AutoZone, whatever. Essentially it's just a little piece of plastic you put in here. It's gonna measure the clearance between the crank and the rod bearing itself. So I did take a little piece, and as you can see here, I just laid it right there on top. Then what we'll do is we will grab the rod cap with the bearing in it, no lube or anything. These rod caps do have a number on the side of them. Make sure that number matches the number on the rod itself. We are using ARP hardware. It does have a lubricant, so make sure you lube up the threads on this before you try to torque them down, or else you'll get bad torque readings. And these say they torque down to 36 foot-pounds. Just make sure you double check your kit to make sure you got the right spec for whatever you're using. I like to just snug them up first, and then we'll go in. Torque them down to 36. Then we'll go ahead and back them off. All right, and you can see here how it kind of squished that down. What you want to do is you want to take the plastic gauge itself. It has all these little guys on here, and it's going to tell you based on the width of how that squished down, what your bearing clearance is. So make sure you check with your machinist, or maybe your machinist already did this stuff for you. But you just want to double check that those bearing clearances are going to be good. So our rod bearing clearance came out to 002, which is exactly what we were looking at hit. There's a range of that tolerance. I'll put those there so you know what they are for this engine combination itself. Once you've done that, make sure you pull the rod cap back off, get it all lubed up, make sure you got plenty of assembly lube in there before you put it together and torque it down for the last time. I've already done that. So we're going to go ahead and tighten this up. And then the one thing I really like to do, you'll kind of notice I have a lot of yellow markings in this engine. When I torque something down for the final time, it gets a paint mark. That way I know I torqued it down, and I don't have to think about, did I miss or skip that one? Not a step I'm willing to take. So we go ahead and we paint mark every bolt. It's the second it gets torqued down for the last time. All right, now we're just going to go through and do number 2, number 3, number 4, number 5, number 6, all in the same order. So we're going to get the piston rings in. We'll get the piston with the rod put in the block. We'll measure our bearing clearances, make sure that those are good. Once we know those are good, we'll torque that one down on its final install, and we'll move to the next one. Okay, bottom end's all set to go. We got the crank, rods, and pistons all installed. Everything measured out perfect, so we're all good to go there. Next we'll be putting the whole lubrication system in the engine, as well as the timing set and then the head. So that'll be the next video. Hope you enjoy this one. Thanks for tuning in.